This mindset shift completely changed how I view the world. It was early on in management consulting. I was blown away by how these people can think fast, talk smart, break down these big, complex problems that clearly our Fortune 100 clients couldn't figure out themselves. I mean, these consultants come up with a working hypothesis in a day, come up with an answer in a month. A lot of them don't even have deep industry knowledge. The clients knew so much more than we did. I mean, yes, partners have industry knowledge, of course, and there's a lot of cases within the business, but it was the generalists who came up with these ideas. And it was the specialists who tweaked it. So how did this all work? Well, if you've been on the channel for a while, you know I've talked about this framework thinking, right? Taking big complex things and break it down into fundamental building blocks. If you haven't seen that, hi, I'm Vicky. I talk about framework thinking in this video here. But before you go, I wanted to ask this question of, okay, well, does that mean that our clients don't know frameworks? You know, they don't know that profit equals revenue minus cost? They do, right? So what's the difference? And here's the advice that changed my life. Clients use thinking for procrastination. We use thinking for execution. Clients, and like me before coming into consulting, I don't want to do anything without certainty, right? When things are uncertain, I think, right? I think about all the ways it could go wrong. I think about all the things I don't know. I think about, with a group, let's talk about the nuances. What are we missing? We're thinking to delay making a decision, specifically to wait until we have enough certainty to move forward. I'm sure we've probably all done this with buying even just a flight, right? Will the price go up? Will the price go down? Should I wait? Am I going on this day or can I change it if things are cheaper? What about the hotels, right? We can't make decisions without delaying them. But obviously there are a lot of opportunity costs with all the time that we spend. And come to think of it, it's ridiculous to try to make a decision when it has a certain outcome. Because that means that decision doesn't matter, right? Like it's very clear what you're going to do because there are no uncertainties. Consultants, when facing uncertainty, embrace it. Because we realize, right, this is a problem worth solving. There are actually stakes involved. We should be making this decision because other people are going to be paralyzed. So consultants act. Because they understand change is the only constant. We need to make that first step before we can even figure out what it is that we don't know, what it is that we do well, what it is that we don't do well. It's more of an iteration process. Consultants use frameworks specifically to help us break down, 1, what is happening here, 2, what do we want to do about it, and 3, how should we do those things? Clients stop at number 1. Consultants start with number 1. Consultants focus on the next step. Not the perfect next step, not the next 100 steps, just the next step because the assumption built in, the acceptance is that 1, we don't have all the data we need, and 2, we need to do something to get the extra data. For clients, and for people who are not trained with framework thinking, they think about what are the next 100 steps that are perfect to lead me to that one goal, right? There's no assumption that the goal may change. There's no assumption that the whole situation could change so your 100 step goes into shambles in a year, in a day, in a week. We tend to solve the impossible problem, right? Because we're not accepting reality for what it is. Change is the only constant, right? We do what we can with what we have, and we can continue to improve. It's an iteration process. So then the next question is, then why don't these clients or, those of us that are non-consultants that haven't thought about things in this way, why can't we learn how to do this? And the answer is, of course we can. But we don't. There is no school for teaching us how to take action because action is not theoretical. It is practical. It needs practice. And the thing that's stopping us from practicing is this intellectualizing of thinking for procrastination, right? We don't actually want to do anything. We don't actually want to see what happens when we do take an action. And that's why framework thinking helps, right? Consultants are just regular people. But why is it that they can take actions and others can't? It's because they have handrails, right? They have these frameworks that help them focus, that help them segment, that helps them just figure out, okay, what is it that I can focus on? What is that small step I can take to get more clarity? And here we get into the really interesting question. What's the difference between frameworks and mental models? These two words are always used interchangeably, right? I am guilty of using it interchangeably on my channel. There's a reason for that. But let me give you the simple explanation. Mental models. This is a mental representation of how the world works. This is naturally how our brain constructs our understanding of the world. Literally, we are building a model of if I touch fire, it's going to be hot. Okay, that's how the world works. I made a video on this if you want to check it out. A framework, on the other hand, is also a representation, a simplification of how the world works. except it is created specifically for you to take some sort of action. You can do something based on this understanding of the world. And this is why we always bump into that wall of, I'm learning these mental models, why can I not apply it into my life, right? Because these models are not inherently action driven. You can learn all you want about relativity, about thermodynamics, about Bayes' theorem, but then how do you turn it into something that works in life? You have to translate the what into how. So let me give you 2 things to start translating those 2. The first one is find frameworks that specifically help you do one of at least 3 things. The first one is focus. The framework helps you focus on one aspect of the thing that you're trying to do. I'll give you an example in a moment. The second thing is the framework helps you to segment a concept. Take the complexity and break it down into different segments, different parts. And third are frameworks that conflict with your current worldview. Because as we know it, right, we have a lot of cognitive biases. We have a lot of these heuristics that are not actually correct. So we want frameworks that are able to tell us, hey, wait a second, the way that you're naturally thinking about this is actually off. So let me give you 3 examples. For focusing, Via Negativa is a great example. Via Negativa is focusing on what is not. So for example, you think about, what is the life that I want to lead? I don't know, I can define it in so many ways. But what I can ask myself is, what is the life that I don't want to lead, right? This is so clear. I can tell you immediately, right? I don't want to be unhealthy. I don't want to be unhappy. I don't want to, work for someone else for the rest of my life. These kinds of things, right? And then you can start to remove those. It's easier to eliminate than to focus. There's a great Bruce Lee quote that says, one does not accumulate, but eliminate. It's not daily increase, but the daily decrease that matters. Next is segment. Here, a good example is 80-20. My favorite framework of all times is very easy to use. If you don't know it, I did a full video on this, but the basic idea is uneven distribution. Right? You can have 20% of input that gives you 80% of output, and vice versa. The remaining 80% of your input only gives you 20% of output. In a business context, it could be 20% of your customers bringing you 80% of the revenue. The rest of them are only 20% of the revenue. This is 80-20 as a way to segment and so that you can focus. Then for frameworks that conflict our worldview. Right? And here, a good example is the 4 types of luck. Again, I talk about it in this video here. I used to think, okay, luck must just be random. But this framework on the 4 types of luck tell me that no, it's not. And actually, there are things you can do to increase how lucky you are. Okay, interesting. Now I'm starting to resurvey what are my initial default mental models and how I can update them, upgrading my thinking operating system. Now, the second thing you can do to help translate that what to how is by thinking about the context and applying these frameworks in different contexts. Those first principles, they work across many different disciplines, many different contexts. Let's take 80-20. Originally, this principle came out of looking at population, came out of looking at productivity. Only 20% of PPOs made up 80% of the P production. So we apply it to our work. Okay, if I want to be productive, what's that 20% of tasks, let's say, that will give me 80% of impact? So let's say work's at work. Okay, then what about my personal life? Let's say, what's that 20% of time that I spend with my family that yields 80% of happiness? Versus, the 80% of time that yield only 20% of happiness and a lot of worries. For my family, we have a lot of fun when we go traveling. Time-wise, it doesn't take that long. We usually go just for a week, but it really bonds us together. We're really happy. We have so many memories from that. So maybe, we try to focus on that and do more trips together. What about in health? What is that 20% of junk food I can stop eating so that I decrease 80% of unnecessary calorie intake? Right? Something like that. You try it in different contexts and try to see how you can use this framework. The key is putting things into action. I also teach a course on this as well, so if you want to learn with others, check out the link in the description. But it doesn't matter whether you do it by yourself or with others, it's about the mindset, right? Ask yourself, am I thinking to procrastinate or am I thinking to take action? How do you deal with uncertainty? Is it by waiting for others to tell you what's certain and try to do them? Or is it accepting uncertainty for what it is, for being essential to life, and choosing to systematically take action one step at a time? If you want to learn more about framework thinking and that systematic way of taking action, then check out this video here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!